Okay, good morning. Welcome to this Wednesday morning developer webinar on upgrading to RAD Studio Enterprise. My name is Paweł Głowacki. I'm working for Embarcadero, a sales consultant. And this is one of the first in the series of upgrading to enterprise webinars. So throughout the upcoming couple of weeks, so every second week, I'm going to run this is the first of the four webinars on different aspects of enterprise features that you might not see in the professional version. So right now, Embarcadero is running some interesting promotions to get all developers to the enterprise version. So I'm going to focus on some of the functionality that is part of RAD Studio and Delphi and C++ Builder that is not available in professional, just to give you a feeling what the value you can get with upgrading to enterprise. So what are the different versions of RAD Studio? So first of all, Delphi and C++ Builder are available as a standalone products, but you can also get them together in RAD Studio. So I'm going to focus today on Delphi, but this very similar structure is also available for C++ Builder. So the very first entry level, the free version, is a starter edition, and this is something that I have been talking about last quarter. We had the focus on a starter edition, and there is a series of webinars on building a calculator application. Also, there is a corresponding series from David Millington, the C++ Builder product manager, available on our Embarcadero YouTube channel. So starter is primarily aimed at hobbyists and people that are starting their career with programming. It does not have a lot of functionality that comes in the full version. It only has a Win32 compiler. So, and also limited functionality in terms of the components, and the libraries also does not come with a source code. So the very first version that really you can start using for professional purposes is professional. And then professional comes with most of the functionality that Delphi or C++ Builder provides. However, it's lacking some of the functionality that you can find in enterprise. So specifically, this is a functionality around connecting to remote databases. So with professional version, the main limitation of professional version is that you can only create applications that connect to the local databases, and also it does not have a Fireduck database access framework. So you have an option to add this functionality through a separate add-on product. And similarly, professional version does not offer a functionality to build a mobile application, so the FireMonkey framework, but this can be also added through the mobile add-on. So higher than professional is the enterprise version, and in fact, the enterprise is the highest version. It has all the functionality because the architect version that is above it is basically a product bundle. So you have the enterprise version plus additional products for database professionals like ER Studio, like DB Power Studio. Also in the RAD Studio full version, there is also an HTML5 builder available in all editions. So enterprise is the full functionality of Delphi. And there are also some of the functionality that is in enterprise that you cannot add through add-on. And this is the functionality that we are going to focus on today. So this is the functionality related to building a client server, or in other words, multi-tier applications that can be built with two different frameworks. So there is a built-in framework in RAD Studio or Delphi or C++ Builder called DataSnap, which is it has quite a long tradition. It was available starting, I believe, from Delphi 5 and Delphi 3, I think it was called Midas for creating multi-tier database applications. And it has been evolving over the years. In Delphi 6 has been renamed to DataSnap, and now is a mature framework for building client-server applications or any applications that can communicate over the wire. There's also a RAD Server product that is part of Delphi. Is evolution of DataSnap, is also for building multi-tier enterprise applications, but it has much more functionality than DataSnap. It has already a lot of functionality pre-built, like user management, like analytics, like sending mobile push notifications or integration with IoT. In fact, tomorrow at 3 p.m. and later I'm going to run also a dedicated webinar on RAD server and IoT. So I'm not going to go too deeply today into this IoT RAD server aspect. So just to give you a few words about each of these reasons why you want to upgrade to enterprise. But like I said, the next developer webinar in about on the 22nd, so in fact it will be in 3 weeks, not in 2 weeks, will be dedicated primarily on multi-device development with FireMonkey. The following webinar that will be on the 8th of March will be primarily focused on using design patterns and code modeling, and the last webinar in the series on exactly 1 month from now, actually not 1 month, on the 22nd of March, will be on a Fireduck database access framework. So a few words about each of these reasons to upgrade to enterprise. So first of all, and probably this is the reason that could be appealing to the biggest number of developers, and hardly anybody doesn't need a capability to create applications for mobile. And this is something unique on the market today. With RAD Studio, with Delphi, with C++ Builder, you can create natively compiled applications from the same source code for all major mobile and desktop platforms. So this is unique capability, and this is a great thing also for existing VCL developers. So you can use all your non-visual source code, so all your algorithms implemented in some units or data modules with some database access logic can be reused directly in a multi-device FireMonkey projects. So that's a big thing, especially for mobile, because if you are primarily interested in doing Windows development, then the VCL library is still there and it's being evolved, and all new capabilities are being added and new components are being added to support the latest versions of Windows 10, deploying, building Windows 10 applications. But if you are interested in any of the other platforms, you can create applications and just from the same source code recompile to Android or iOS or Mac. So that's a big thing, because normally other tools on the market provide either a capability to build just for Android or just for the Apple stack. So this is with Delphi, with C++ Builder, you can create your application once and you get a natively, and that's important to focus and stress, natively compiled applications for Android and iOS. So on top of this compiler capability, there is also a sophisticated multi-device form designer. So this basically means that it's not only the pure capability of having possibility of using different compilers and compiling the source code. Also the user interfaces that you can build with FireMonkey can be created in a way that is specific to a given form factor, to given platform. So there is something called visual form inheritance, where you can actually build, design your user interface once. So this is a master form design, and then you can create an inherited views where you can actually adjust the layout, or or organization of your user interfaces for specific platform and specific form factor. So that's very useful thing to do, and I'm going to go a little bit deeper into the FireMonkey development in the next webinar in 3 weeks from now. So the second reason why you would like to really go into the world of enterprise development is the UML modeling and design patterns, so the gang of 4 design patterns. So this is some in professional version. You can still use a class diagram, and that's the only thing you can do for modeling. With enterprise version, you have so much more. So you have all additional diagram types, and also you have an embedded design patterns that you can use to use some of the best industry practices, how you should be structuring your code to solve a certain standard problems in a best way and in an automatic fashion. So that's a big thing. You can we are going to look into this topic on March 8th, so in about 5 weeks from now. So I'm going to give you a deeper view into the possibilities that comes with possibility of code modeling and what you can do with other type of diagrams. This is great for designing the conceptual phase of your enterprise application. The enterprise application tends to be complicated, so really the time that you spend on creating a good concept, a strong architecture, understanding what your application is going to do can pay off in the future and can reduce the development and the time that you spend on testing and acceptance of your application. So here on this slide you have a number of things, so different UML diagrams that are available, a possibility to generate documentation, and that's how the documentation look like, and also the sequence diagram that lets you look into your source code from a different perspective, not from the perspective of the organization of your classes and hierarchies like in the typical class diagram, but also from the perspective of how these different elements in your code interacts. So that's a little bit closer how you can see different exchanges of methods between different classes within your project. And then there is a gang of 4 design patterns. So in fact, I have this book on my bookshelf behind me in my office here in Amsterdam. So these are the patterns that are already built into the enterprise version of Delphi, and you can just use it just to generate code that solves a certain problem. So that's a very interesting topic. Many developers benefit from just looking into the instead of trying to solve your problem from scratch, you can look into how the typical problems in computing are solved by others and convert it into the reusable patterns. And the nice thing is not just a book, but it is an embedded functionality inside of the enterprise version of RAD Studio. So that's something we are also going to look into more detail in future webinar. So also something that's part of UML modeling, it's part also of professional version, but it also falls into the category of modeling. So audits and metrics, when you try to understand your code, when you do UML modeling, you use design patterns, it's likely that you also want to look into the audits and metrics to understand how healthy and what is the structure of your maybe a few millions of lines of source code. So let's go into the topic of today's webinar. So specifically, the possibility to connect to the remote databases is for many developers the number one reason to upgrade to enterprise version. So with a version that comes with professional, you have only in fact you have the node, the Fireduck node in a data explorer, but the number of databases are limited to traditional local databases, and you cannot really connect to a remote application. So this model fat client architecture, when you have a multiple applications connecting to a central database, also have some has some value, and in some use cases can be optimal solution. So this is if you have a big enterprise and then there are many departments, so maybe you want to create a system that is used by maybe 10 or 20 people maximum that basically want to use the same information. So instead of creating a full-featured enterprise functionality, you may want to actually go for just a traditional fat client architecture. It has some benefits and some drawbacks. It has more drawbacks than benefits, but for some simple solutions, it could be an ideal architecture where you just want to have the same application running on multiple computers and connecting to the same database. So then you have to be aware about the transactions, about these kind of things. But this is the first possibility to move from just local database that is only available in professional version to a database that is running remotely somewhere in the network. So another reason why you want to go for enterprise version is a full functionality of Fireduck. So this is how the Data Explorer looks like in the enterprise edition of RAD Studio. You see all of the supported databases, including some high-end databases like Oracle, like SQL Server, like IBM DB2 and other databases. So in RAD Studio, there is a number of different data access technologies. Still, it's there if you have some legacy applications. The Borland database engine is no longer available out of the box, but it's available as a separate download that you can get and install if you really need to. There is also IBX framework. So this is framework specifically for working with Interbase and Firebird databases. There is also an ActiveX data objects framework. So this is a layer, the ADO components is a layer of Microsoft ActiveX data objects. So this is another technology that is there in Delphi for a number of releases. And then there is also a DB Express framework that was the #1 framework until the Fireduck was introduced. So in DB Express had the specific architecture with unidirectional cursors. You couldn't really build applications like we used to do with the BDE, but the Fireduck is so much better, and that's the with no questions, I think, the best database access library available in RAD Studio. So the Fireduck has a lot of benefits. It's high performant, it's easy to use, it lets you connect to all the major databases, so all the latest versions of high-end databases are supported, and that's one of the key design objectives of Fireduck. Initially, historically, was to be a replacement for the BDE. So the with support, with the support to all relational databases, but using the same architecture. So if you are familiar with building applications with the BDE, you will find Fireduck very similar and very powerful. In fact, there is a refined utility that lets you in a automatic way convert existing BDE source code into the Fireduck source code, because that's really very similar. The difference is in the name of the components. So like we had a T-table component in BDE, there is a TFD table in Fireduck, there was a T-query in BDE, there is a FD query, and there is a number of other one-to-one correspondence. Also, the names of the units are different, but otherwise the functionality is quite similar and not we could also say the same. So you can still put just a TFD table component, but you need to have a TFD connection, which is a mandatory component. In PD, T database was optional, and T data source, and you can display your records in a TDB grid and navigate using a TDB navigator. So with Fireduck, this is also a good use case. You can connect to a very big databases, and there is much better functionality. There's high performance, simplified deployment, so you don't need to install a BD engine on every client application. The drivers themselves are compiled into the application, so you don't need to deploy separate drivers like in the case of DB Express library. Also, the full source code of Fireduck is provided. It's implemented in Delphi. So if you don't understand how certain functionality works, or you want to extend Fireduck, you can do it easily by looking into the source code. So that's a very powerful framework. It has a lot of functionality. In fact, there was more than a year ago, there is a series available on our Embarcadero YouTube channel, the Fireduck skill sprints, when we were looking into a more detail into some of the specific features. So things like working with metadata, or specifically live data window, and other options that we are going to look deeper into the upcoming webinar on March 22nd, the last one in the series of this upgrade to enterprise webinars. So now let's focus on the last thing about the Fireduck. Is the NoSQL database support in Fireduck. So now we have MongoDB, the most popular NoSQL database, and Fireduck also provides connectivity to this very popular, very performant database. Is supported as well in an enterprise version of Fireduck. Okay, so the last reason why would you want, last main reason why would you want to upgrade to enterprise version is support for multi-tier architectures. So you can just build departmental applications that just connect and let you maybe a handful of people, 20, 30 people to connect to a database. But with the fat client application, you want build a system that would scale globally. And in the cloud era, in the internet era, that's not very difficult to imagine. You can just put your mobile application on App Store, and if you try to connect directly from every single application running on every single smartphone in the world to just one database, it just does not going to work. So that's why you typically want to connect to the one central store of your data through a certain intermediate layer, through a service. So these services can be different. With RAD Studio Enterprise, we have two different frameworks, DataSnap and RAD Server, but they are both used to solve the same problem of scalability. So you can have high availability and fault tolerance. So if a certain service or certain instance of the servers that are used to connect to the database fails, you can be redirected to a different one. You have a better security, so all the application does not know about the underlying database platform, about the credentials to connect to this database, which is the case in case of a fat client architecture. Also, when you want to change either the front-end application or the structure of a database, it's relatively easier than changing the architecture of the fat client, where you have to change everything from the database to the application that connects to it. So there is plenty of reasons why modern database applications are built in a multi-tier way. So there are REST API is currently the most common architecture for connecting to databases, and also that the HTTP is de facto a standard for connectivity. And as part of RAD Studio Enterprise, you have a DataSnap framework, and you have a RAD Server framework. So DataSnap framework is more like a low-level SDK. It's just do-it-yourself kind of approach. So there are wizards to create servers, and there are wizards to create clients or parts of the client applications to connect to servers. The deployment of DataSnap is free. So if you have a enterprise license, you don't need to have any additional license. So all your systems that you build with DataSnap, you don't need to pay any royalties or anything like this. So on the other side, there is a RAD server. RAD server is a part of RAD Studio. The RAD Server Development Edition is installed as part of RAD Studio. So you have a development RAD server, and the RAD server deployment is licensed separately. So if you want to go into the deployment, then you need to have purchase separately deployment licenses, either per number of users or per number of connected devices to RAD server, and then you can use some scalability technology, but in fact it's the number of system databases of RAD servers that counts in terms of licenses. So in this quarter, if you go for an enterprise edition as part of the promotion, you will also get an additional 10 user license for RAD server deployment. So that's a solution for really implementing a regular enterprise system. So if you, for example, want to build a system for hundreds of users, some of the first things you want to do is to manage those users, to provide a functionality to create users, to log into the system, to log out from the system. And that's what RAD Server provides. So it has the user management and analytics already built in, and it's easy to scale. So you can just gradually add parts to it without changing the existing deployment. And it's based on the REST API architecture, so that's very modern and good to go. So at the same time, DataSnap is still there, and if you just don't need to have a user management, you just want to have a very quick way to create two applications that communicate over the network using either the HTTP or more rarely the TCP/IP protocol. This could be also a solution for solving simpler problems. So there are use cases for DataSnap and use cases for RAD server. It's up to you as a developer to decide which framework better fits your needs, and they are both available as part of the enterprise. So RAD server, going a little bit deeper into RAD server, I have been publishing. It's available on the YouTube channel of community of Embarcadero. Last month I've been doing migrating to RAD server webinars, so I have spent some time on the functionality of RAD server, so I'm not going to go too deep to it right now, but this is clearly the perfect backend for systems that you build with Delphi and C++ Builder. It makes publishing REST APIs very easy. So it has a deep understanding of a REST API architecture. There are wizards that let you build REST API resources that can be accessed with different HTTP verbs like get, post, delete, put, and so on. So that's very handy. Also, the server metadata can be published using a standard Swagger documentation format, so that make it possible for applications implemented, client applications implemented in other languages to better integrate into the services implemented with RAD Studio. Also, RAD Server has a mobile push notification functionality. That's a critical thing for a mobile application user experience to keep the end user engaged. So support for Android and for Apple push notification is built into the RAD server, so you can just call a certain API, certain functionality that is built into the RAD server to send push notifications to some or to all connected mobile devices. Also, user group management, you can create users. Part of the development version of that is part of RAD server, there is a 5 user license, so you can build your multi-user management, but when you go and roll out to production, you want to go and have a regular deployment license. Also, something I'm going to talk a little bit more tomorrow on a RAD server and IoT integration webinar is a support for integrating with different kinds of sensors. So there is a concept of IoT edge modules. So this is a functionality to collect data coming from all kinds of IoT devices. So the IoT devices, the Internet of Things, is the possibility to gather and interact with all kinds of things, not necessarily computers, sensors, and with edge modules. You can do it relatively easy. So we are going to look at it. Also, part of the RAD server is a beacon fence. So this is a technology around beacons for micro location services, and beacon fence is a client-side technology and is part of the license of the RAD server. Okay, so that's how the RAD server architecture is structured. So we have one system database. So that's an interbase database. So the first time you run the server, this system database can be automatically created for you, or you can have your existing database and then deploy it to production. So typically you would just generate this system database from the EMS server. In fact, the EMS server itself is already pre-built. So there is a development version of EMS server, which is an executable that is in the bin directory of RAD Studio, and it already has a lot of functionality built in. So it knows how to work with users, groups. Installations means the connected mobile devices, push for mobile notifications, and edge modules for IoT integration. So this functionality is already built into the EMS server, but you can, as a developer, you want to add functionality that you are building, so you do it through a pluggable EMS packages. So in enterprise version, there is a wizard to create those packages, and they are compiled into the BPL format and can be loaded into the EMS server at startup through typically in production through the ini file, and then without disrupting your existing architecture, you can just add or change individual packages, so you can add or change gradually the available REST API resources. So that's a very flexible architecture, and the client for RAD server can be anything that can talk HTTP or HTTPS. So this could be browsers, this could be third-party languages, but also obviously Delphi or C++ builder applications. There are some dedicated client server and client components like TMS provider component that you can use to communicate with the EMS server. So there is much less code to write if you are using also Delphi and C or C++ builder to build clients. So this is a RAD server architecture, and there is also a DataSnap architecture. So that's actually I've been working with before RAD server has been introduced into Delphi and C++ builder. DataSnap was my favorite technology. So this is actually relatively old slide, but it's still depicts the whole DataSnap stack as a whole. So you can basically, it's just for building arbitrary client-server applications, and you can use going from top to bottom of this slide. You can use Delphi or C++ builder for building servers, and the servers can be built in different ways. So they can be hosted as a standalone application. So this could be a VCL application, nowadays also FireMonkey application, a console application, or Windows service application that starts automatically with a system that's handy in many cases. Or also DataSnap Server can be deployed into the web server. So this could be either a DLL ISAPI modules that you can deploy to IIS server, or it's also possible to build a web server as a standalone application, standalone executable that has a web server functionality built in. And then when you have a server, there are different so-called server methods life cycle options. So within the server, there are server methods. So these are the objects that developers design that are their life cycle is managed by the server. You can specify if it's an invocation, which means that the server method is created just for the duration of one call to the server session, which means that there is a one server methods instance within the server process for every connected client. Or there could be a global server methods, which means that the server methods instance is global for the whole server. And different message exchange patterns, so traditional request response, but also possibility for doing callbacks. So the server can call back client when something interesting is happening. Also all kinds of parameter types, so you can pass obviously all built-in parameters. So when you define functionality that the clients can call, you can use either a built-in Delphi or C++ builder types. You can use JSON, or you can use some of the special types, like for example streams can be also passed in and out from server methods. And then when you try to communicate between the client and server, you have an option of using either TCP/IP or HTTP. And then there is a concept of transport filters where you can actually provide implementation to modify the raw stream of bytes that there is exchange between the client and server. So there are some built-in transport filters like encryption and compression, but it's also possible to create your own custom transport filters. And then on the client side, this is actually, there are different wizards that you can use. You can use either a DBX, this is an older technology, or a new REST client wizard to generate client-side proxies, client-side code to connect to the server. So that's another thing with a DataSnap architecture, that you don't need to have any type of a description of your interfaces. Only the running server is enough. From the running server, if the client or the wizard generating client code can connect to the server, it can query dynamically the functionality of the server and generate the appropriate client-side code. So there are also mappings to other languages, but primarily we are using Delphi or C++ proxies to connect to these servers. So that's this is just very quickly the idea here, and I just wanted to show you something that is really enterprise related. So how you could use DataSnap and RAD Server with something called a Fireduck JSON reflection. So most of the time when you are building enterprise applications, you really want to build applications that communicate with a database. So a typical use case is a possibility to get data through the server from the database, display them on the client, but also be able to update this data back to the database. So that's a typical database functionality. And Fireduck JSON reflection is a framework introduced back in XE5, a version of RAD Studio, that make it super easy to build such a solution. So I'm going to use to build it from scratch for DataSnap, and I also have a pre-built demo for doing the same thing in RAD Studio. So let me quickly switch to RAD Studio to show you this from scratch. Okay, so the first of all, what kind of data we want to expose to the clients. So this is an enterprise version of RAD Studio. Maybe I will make it full screen so we can see a little bit more on the screen. And these are the different databases we can connect to. The database that I'm preferring, and that's part of the RAD Studio installation, and our flagship relational database is Interbase. So I'm going to use one of the demo databases that comes with the installation of RAD Studio. You can in fact configure in the enterprise version to point from Fireduck to a remote database and do some basic functionality here. So I can, for example, I can browse through the tables. I can just right click on a must SQL on any node here, and I can specify, for example, the IP address. So this is a local IP address, but in general, this could be a remote database. So I can connect to this database, and I can browse through different tables. For example, the customer table, I can preview a structure of a remote database. I can preview data, and in fact, I could use other statements here as well. Just to execute arbitrary SQL against the remote database. So this is the data that I want to display through the server on the client application. So okay, so let's create a new server application. So in this is you have either a DataSnap Server node or EMS node in enterprise version that is not available in professional. In DataSnap, you have an option to build your application as an either a DataSnap REST application, DataSnap Server application, and DataSnap Web Broker application. So these two, DataSnap REST application and DataSnap Web Broker application, are web applications, and so you can build them as a standalone web servers or as a DLL for deploying into the IIS. DataSnap Server is the only wizard here that will generate just a plain executable that you can run and stop. You can possibly put it into the auto start group of your Windows to start it. We are working now for the upcoming version of RAD Studio, codename Godzilla, to also support this technology in enterprise version, but also for Linux deployment, but currently it's only for Windows. So I'm going to go for this DataSnap Server. So it's going to be kind of I'm working on a simple internal tool within Embarcadero for managing different versions, different features of Delphi, small database. And just to keep it simple, that's the kind of choices that I'm doing, but I'm doing this on an example of an existing database, but this could be any database. So here is a DataSnap Server, and this is first wizard asks you if you want to have it as a forms application, console application, or a service application. So this last one is interesting because you can just install it as a Windows service so that it can be started and stopped. That does not have any user interface. For development, probably the forms is the most easy one. And if you select forms on the next screen, you can choose for either VCL or FireMonkey. On Windows, VCL is probably a better choice. And here we have a functionality of the server. So first of all, no longer anybody is using TCP/IP. TCP/IP is not a stateless protocol. It does not scale well. So I'm going to focus just on HTTP. I'm not going for any authentication authorization, but it's simple. You can very simply do a basic HTTP authentication when you need to provide username and password. And here is also the wizard can generate some sample methods and the server methods class. So something I want to do. And then there are other options. You can add filters for encryption and compression. So that's basically influencing the raw stream of bytes that are exchanged between client and servers. Also, you can have mobile connectors. So this is for other, if you want to have clients in a non-Delphi or HTML clients, this could be useful. But for if both sides of the application are just plain apps, probably you don't want to touch those. So I'm going to keep the HTTP and sample methods, go for the next, and here we have a HTTP port. We can try if this is free, and if I would choose for example, HTTPS on this screen, I would see also the HTTPS port, but I just don't want to go for it. I just want to go for HTTP, and that's fine for my demo purposes. And the last screen in the wizard is the base class for the server methods. So this is something I already mentioned this. So when you develop DataSnap servers, the functionality that is available to clients is implemented as a public and published methods of something called server methods class. So this server methods class are their lifecycle is managed by the server, and whatever you put there as a public method will be available to the client. So if you have some basic functionality, you can go for T component. But if you want to do, for example, a database application, you want to go for a data module to be able to put some like query components or connection components. There is also a DS server module. So this is also for creating a multi-tier database application, but this is an old architecture based on app server interfaces. So this is not compatible with the Fireduck JSON reflection, and it's probably Fireduck JSON reflection is much better. Okay, so now I have created a server. I'm going to save it in some nice place. So maybe a demo enterprise demo 1. Okay, that's a nice name. So I'm going to put here 2 subfolders, one for all the server files and one for all the client files. So server here, I'm going to put here an uform server, and there are some other files already generated by the wizard. Need to keep their default names. That's easy, and the project will be my enterprise server. Okay, so I'm going to put the form enterprise server, DataSnap server. Okay, so okay, so there are different files here generated. So that's an empty form server. Does not have any meaning here, and it's because it's a VCL Forms application. There is also a server container unit. So this is a heart of the DataSnap server. There is a DS server, which is a key component that implements the functionality of the DataSnap server. There is an HTTP service component. So for every protocol that you want to support, there would be another specialized component. I have chosen for HTTP, so that's why I have an HTTP service, and it has all the functionality that I have selected, like port 8080, for example. And there is also a server class component. So this is a connection between this server container, the heart of the server, and my server methods unit. So this is my server methods unit, and all the methods that are available as public or published on this class will be available for clients to call. So the wizard generated for me some echo string and reverse string methods. So how does the server know that this class exists? So this is the role of DSS server class. It has this lifecycle property invocation server session that you can use. So session means that there would be a one server methods class for every connected client, and there is an event on get class. So in this event, the server knows the type of a server methods, not an instance, but the type. So as a programmers, we don't instantiate those server methods. It is done internally by the server, depending on the policy, the lifecycle policy. So here we have a functionality to implement functionality on the server, and I can just go and add very quickly some of the database access components that I want to use. So for example, I have a customers, and to quickly set up connection to the database, I can just drag this from a data explorer onto the form designer, and automatically I will get two components added to the form. So one is a FD connection component, so that's the Fireduck connection component. I can just open it and test if I can connect to a specific database and do some other things, like for example execute arbitrary SQL, and can get some information about all the drivers and all kinds of things. And there is a second component, customer table component. So this is the query component. I can preview what kind of data I would get from it. So that looks like a right data I want to have. So now these two components are on the form. There is one more component that the Fireduck architecture requires, and this is a component for working with a bin representation of data. So the data that is going to be sent back to the client is going to be encoded using a binary algorithm. So this component just needs to be there, and it does not do anything extra, but without this component that would not work. So now I need to write some code. So here I'm going to just add this data Fireduck JSON reflect module unit to be added, and now I can implement a method for returning data. So I see that I have now just 5 minutes more, so I'm just only going to do the get employees. In fact, because I don't want to run out of time, I'm going to stop at this moment and just go into the pre-built version of this demo to quickly show you what I would build anyway here. So again, I'm back into this demo group, and I'm here in the server methods implementation. I have these two components, one query component, one connection component, and now I have two methods, one for getting data and one for applying updates. So these are the special types of parameters that can be returned from the server. TFD JSON dataset. So in one operation you can return more than one table, and there is a second procedure that takes a delta, so all the changes from the client to be put back into the database. So this is very straightforward functionality. I have a shared because that's something that is used on both end server. The employees is the name of the data set. So if you have more than one data set, that's you want to share this in a separate unit that is used by both server and client projects. So here we have just an employee table. We want to make it close. We just create an FD JSON datasets object that is going to be returned from this method, and using a special TFD JSON dataset writer class, there is a class method list add, and we can add to this list of datasets all the employee table. So this is really very powerful stuff, because it is, I don't care about the names of the fields, of their types. Everything is happening automatically. from this method, it will just it's going to be just returned back. So the server, when it's implemented, and the update functionality is the same. So you can take the deltas, you can create an apply object and take deltas as parameter, and then you can apply these updates back to the employee table, which is a query, has a command property, so it would generate appropriate insert, update, and delete statements to be executed against the underlying database. And if there are any errors, they would be raised. And if there is an exception raised on the server, it will be propagated to the client. Okay, so that's a server functionality, and server needs to be running for those things to work. Okay, and there is also a DataSnap client. So that's an application. So if you want to build a client, I have just created a multi-device application, and you can do it by file, new multi-device application. Once you have your application running, you can then to connect to the server, you need to go through the wizard. So there is a DataSnap REST client module wizard here. I can use, and I have already done it, so I'm not going to finish this wizard. But this wizard is responsible for generating some of the Delphi source code, in case of Delphi, that will access the functionality of a DataSnap server. So I'm just pointing this wizard to the server. I can just tell the wizard what kind of server it is, but I can also specify that I don't know. And it needs to know where it is, so it needs to be running for this wizard to work. It's running locally. I can test connection, and I could click on finish, and then the wizard generates for me these two units. There is a client classes unit, so this is a unit that was automatically generated for me, and it has the same functions that are available on the server. So the architecture here is that you can call those methods locally, and the parameters will be sent to the server, and the response that was returned from the server will be returned from this method. So that's a very handy functionality. So you can just use this automatically generated method. It's using REST, so HTTP communication. There's also a client module unit generated by the wizard that hosts the DS REST connection component. So this is a client-side component for connecting to the database, and yeah, it has all the information about where is the server. And the wizard also generated a property on this data module of the same type as this server methods unit type. So no, client classes type. So this type. So if I want to access the functionality of this class, I can just access the property, and it will be created in a lazy fashion. So the first time you access this property, the internal implementation will be created. So now in my form, I can just start calling methods, and to centralize access to the database functionality to the server, instead of putting on the form, I have created a data module. I have a FD memory table component, and so this is a component for keeping a data set in memory. Also, you need to have this stan storage bin link component present for things to work. And then what we do here in code is also not very complicated. You need to add this Fireduck JSON reflection unit, and we just call a method getEmployees that was implemented on the server using our generated by the wizard client module, and it will return this same FD JSON data sets that we have just returned from the server. So this is a magic of the DataSnap architecture. So it will know how to properly serialize these FD JSON data sets and deserialize it on the client. So when you just call this method, you will get this information on the client, and then you can append data from the client to the local FDMem table using the append data. Yeah, and then you can do, you can use visual live bindings to connect visual user interface components to this data in the memory table. So here I can go into the live bindings designer, and this is my live binding designer. Maybe make it a little bit bigger so you can see better. So this is my grid is connected through the live bindings to the FD mem table employees, so it will work properly. There are one more thing that you need to do is to make sure that FD mem table has cached updates property set to true, so it can be also used to work with updates. Also, this FD mem table has to have the same fields as the server-side fields, and that's one trick that I have learned. So just to show you how you can make sure that this employee table has a certain field. So if I open it and execute, I see there is an employee number, last name, and first name. So if you want to put this information to the memory table on the client, you want to make sure that these field definitions are also on the client. So the one easy way to do it is the following. I can imagine that I have this another memory table, TFD mem table component. I can call it TFD mem. So I can take this mem table component, I can cut it from here, put it for a moment on the employee table, paste it. And here I can do something called assign dataset. So in this way, I can get the metadata structure from this query into my FD mem table. So I right click on this one, do an assign, and notice that now my FD mem table has the proper field definition. And now the trick is to take this guy, cut it again, and put it on the client module or my DM local module, paste it, and it still has the proper field definition. So now if you will be able to use this in code. So that's a nice trick that I have. In the past, I have been just recreating this manually, but that is so much faster and so much easier. So now when you do an append data, that would work. Okay, so let's go and see how this works. And before I just finish this demo, here is the delta list. So if I do an update, if there are some changes done in the memory table, they are posted, and then I have a special FD JSON deltas that I want to send to the server to be put into the database. Okay, let's run. The server is still running, and now I can just go and run the client application. Okay, and I can get data. Okay, so these are the data from the client. I can change, so this have been, for example, then first name to Kim, not maybe Kim Lambert, but Kim Basinger. Okay, so that's my user. I can click on apply, and now let's have a look if this is actually working. Okay, so I can go and refresh this database, look into the customers, and I should see the Kim Basinger, or the other way, where we see this is actually customer from a different database. But what I can do to prove that it's actually working, I can just rerun this application one more time, and it should have the updated information. Oh, we have a Basinger, and we can change again to Kim 5 and apply this data, stop this application, run it again, and I should see updated data as well. Okay, so sorry for overrunning a little bit this presentation for a few moments. So let's finish it up. I hope that my virtual machine let me go back to where I was. So hopefully that in a moment I should see the my presentation. Control F. That should. Oh, that's the magical combination. And now I can go back to PowerPoint. So that was a very quick demonstration of an enterprise database solution using a Fireduck JSON and a DataSnap framework that is part of enterprise version of RAD Studio. So if you want to build applications that connect to the remote databases that are using Fireduck, that are scalable and multi-tier, that using DataSnap or RAD Server, you need to upgrade to Enterprise Edition. And that's something I'm focusing in this series of webinars. So the next webinar, in fact, next webinar maybe not exactly in this series, but also related to RAD Server is tomorrow, not at 11 but at 3 p.m. It's actually repeated for different time zones and run from the US by Jim. So you are welcome to register. So the registration link is on the community site. And there are also upcoming upgrade to enterprise webinars specifically on mobile development in 3 weeks from now on Wednesday, on modeling code with Delphi Enterprise in 5 weeks from now, and also accessing databases with Fireduck in 7 weeks from now. So that's more information. You can go to the community if you are not going already. You can also find more information about the RAD Studio on our documentation site on DocWiki. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. And you can also use the question pane here in the GoToWebinar panel. I see that there are already people asking questions, so let me quickly go through that. So the question, let me quickly go through them. So questions around UML. So I will defer these questions to the webinar in 5 weeks about the specific functionality of the UML modeling. Also, let me see more questions and quickly browse for questions. Again, some more UML questions. And questions primarily from Alf. So hi Alf, I hope you are doing well. So there are also some specific questions that I can handle with Alf directly. The slides, questions about the slides and the recording. So this presentation will be available through the YouTube Embarcadero channel, but also yesterday I have put a blog post welcoming you to this presentation. So I'm going to edit this and put the link to the slides and to the source code of the demo that I have done. Okay, thank you very much for watching this why upgrade to RAD Studio Enterprise webinar. So please join me tomorrow for the RAD Server and IoT integration at 3 p.m. or 8 p.m. EMEA time, and also join me for the upcoming bi-weekly Wednesday developer webinars on mobile development, on UML modeling, and on Fireduck. Thank you very much and have a great time.